Right, welcome back. As you can see now, everything's been left to cure overnight from what we finished yesterday. The last thing we done was we put our main rear spar top in, and that's now cured. The next thing for us to do is to place our W4 ribs in their locations, situated here and here. So I'll do that, get that sorted out, and then we'll start doing the actual bracing pieces that run through our central panel, because this is left open. It's just got a clear PVC covering just on the top, and it's all reinforced with 3/16 square on the top and the bottom of the ribs. So I don't think you really want to worry about me gluing these in. You've seen some of those processes before, so what I'll do is I'll get on and do that, and then when we come back we'll look at putting some of these other bits and pieces in that we need to do to finish off this centre section. Right, as you can see, we got our top rib spar in position, and we've glued our W4 ribs in. While we're waiting for them to dry, the next thing we need to do in the instructions is the tips, the trailing edge parts of the W1 rib. These little tab bits here need to be cut off in line with the braces that are going to be put in a minute, which are our W6 ribs. These are 1/8 thick. Okay, what we need to do is just get ourselves our little razor saw and just gently following the line. And I always find if you look down the top of the centre of the blade, you will find you get a nice square cut, and just gradually cut through. No need to rush, it will go, it's only balsa, it's very soft, it will go through. And then once you're through, you should just be able to lift that off, tidy any little bits that have come off there, put that to one side, and then repeat the same thing for the other side here. I'll just pan in a little bit so you can see, hopefully a little bit better, what I've done. There you go. And then if I lift up and just bring it round, I'll just show you the process again. Nice straight saw, look down the top of the blade, nice and gently. It is balsa, it's very soft, so you'll get there reasonably quickly with very little effort. And that's through now, and now we have a nice angled joint. Now what we can do now, if I just pan out a little bit for you, is we can take our W6 rib and then just offer that into where it's going to sit, and you will see we have a nice angled joint ready for when that's glued in. Okay, right, I shall just pan back out again, and what I'll do now, as I say, I'm still waiting for this to dry and I don't want to dislodge this anyway, so when you come back next time I will move on to the next section, which is actually putting in our balsa brace block here that sits against the two top and lower rear spars, and then our W6 rib sits directly onto that like so. Okay, and this is all at the right height as per the plan suggests. Okay, thank you. Right, back we are again. Our rear spar top spar is in place. It's near enough dried to a stage where I can start working on the next stage, and that is to add this 3/16 sheet by 4.5 by 1.5 inches, and that's got to go in this location here. As this is going to be fairly structural in my opinion, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to epoxy this into place to give it some really nice strength, and also when I do my W6 ribs I will use that as well, because I think this area needs to be reasonably strong, because it could take a few knocks in the car or whatever. So what I've done on the W6 rib, I don't know if you can see, I actually put a profile on this edge which is in line with the profile that's needed from the plans. Some people will not do this, they'll just put some glue and hope the glue fills the gap. I like to put the glue, do this so the glue pushes right in and we've got contact throughout all the wooden structure. Okay, so what I'll do while we're at this stage, I'll now glue this in position. So again, I've pre-mixed some epoxy. It's 30-minute again, so there's no real rush with this. You don't have to panic about getting this on before it dries like you do with the 5-minute epoxy, and it gives you a bit of time for repositioning if the need's there. And we'll just run a nice amount of that down the top and bottom. We don't want to go excessively this because, as I say, it's got a good grab and it's going to be a lot stronger than our aliphatic glue, and it's not going to add that much weight to the model. And I'm a little bit cautious when it comes to building. I like to make sure everything's secure and firmly put together. As I say, it gives the model the best chance in the air, and especially if you're like me, when you're taking a model to the airfield, you sometimes inadvertently knock it. This will help provide breakages or prevent breakages in transit as well. The stronger the model, the better. Oh, I nearly forgot. We just need to add a little bit of epoxy on the backs of our W4 ribs, like so. Again, making sure we've got a nice strong bond. Offer that up to the top and rear spars, push into position. As this balsa's a little bit softer than other balsa we've been using previously, I'm going to just put a couple of clamps into place, as I'm going to use some packing pieces just to keep everything nice and secure. I'll try and get these clamps so they sit halfway down if the clamp will allow. Again, just making sure everything lines up, and again, it's handy to keep the scraps, any offcuts that you have during your building process, as these will help in doing little jobs like these. Okay, right, again, just check, make sure everything's lined up. As I say, this is just push this a little bit out with this clamp sitting here. So just have another look at what we're doing, and then put that in position. Again, check to make sure everything's as we would wish to see it. And I think I'm just going to add a slightly longer clamp just down the bottom for good measure. Okay, again, it's just a case now of leaving that to dry, and then we can come back and start thinking about inserting our W6 ribs. Okay. Right, that's been in place for a little while. What I did forget to mention before we left you a minute ago was that when you put the clamps on, 9 times out of 10 you're going to get a little bit of resin residue squeeze out from the top. This could become a problem when we come to sanding, as obviously the resin is going to be a lot harder than the bolster we left with unsightly ridge. So what I do is I get a little bit of cloth and some methylated spirits, dampen the cloth with methylated spirits, and then just rub along the seam to remove any excess resin, as this will save a lot of time and effort later on, and frustration if it comes to that. So again, methylated spirits for epoxy acts like a thinning agent and removes it quite adequately, so when you come to do your final sanding you don't get left with unsightly ridges on the model. What I'm going to do now, we've got our W6 rib which has got its profile, and it's just a case of adding some epoxy to our profiled edge, and then again likewise on the recessed part where the rib is going to meet the trailing edge. And then it's just a case of carefully lining it up as per the plan, and just letting it sit into place. The only thing I have forgotten to do here is our W1 rib. I forgot to put a little bit on there. Easily done, but as you can see, you can always take it off and start again. Right, once that's in place, I will just add a pin. And before I put the pin, I will just check to make sure everything's nice and square, which it is. Give it a little push just to make sure everything's in line, and then just push our pin through just to hold it all in place. Okay, that just leaves this side here to do. You'll probably notice when I come to the other side there's a little bit of an overlap. I like to do that, and I can just sand it down flush with the W6 rib after I've completed the job. Again, down our profiled edge, just go back and get a little bit more, and then along our notched section at the rear, and this time not forgetting our W1 whip with its chamfer, and then again locate into position, ensuring that everything sits in line with the lines on the plan. Again, with our set square, just check to make sure everything's straight, which it is slightly off at the moment. That's it, all square now. Just make sure we've got a nice butt joint there, and pin into position. Okay, so that's that done. Okay, that's going to take a little while to dry now, so I'm going to leave this to dry and have a look at the instructions and see where we go from here. Right, the last thing I'm going to do in this session is I'm just going to add the front main spar. In the instructions I've looked all the way through and it hasn't actually mentioned that you need to put this in, but I think we need to put it in now before we go any further, because after that everything revolves around working up this end in terms of our leading edge, our riblets, and we obviously need something to key our riblets into our leading edge, so I'm going to put that in now, and then that's what I'm going to call a night then. So without further ado, I'm just going to mark with a pencil roughly where I need to be putting my epoxy, because I want to epoxy from the wing roots to the first W rib one, because that's where the dihedral brace is on both sides, and also I will just put some aliphatic glue in here just for that process. Right, without further ado, I'll get that done. Right, nearly there, I haven't run away. actually got a bit of epoxy left. So what I will do, I will probably, rather than waste that, because again strength is everything, and for the small amount I'm going to be using, it isn't going to add that much weight. I shall just pop a bit of epoxy in these joints. Seems a shame to waste the glue, so that's that. Also just pop a little bit on the W1 ribs at the dihedral brace location, and then it's just a case of offering these in. I've actually done the ends as well because we want them to join up again. This is going to provide a lot of our strength to the wing, and it's just a matter now of clamping that all in. But what I'll do again before we get to that stage, I've got a little excess glue at the top of the dihedral brace. Again, when it comes to sanding, if it overlaps, balsa is softer than epoxy, so it's better to get rid of it now. Again, I will take a little piece of methylated spirits on a cloth and then just rub any excess off and then apply the clamps. It may just be that I have to revisit this again in terms of our methylated spirits on the cloth, but it looks pretty good, this end anyway. The 3 clamps in there, likewise the same down the other end, just making sure that everything's in line. It makes the sanding processes a lot easier if we can get it as roughly in position as we can now, and later on in the processes. Right, that looks pretty good to me. It's just a matter of letting that all cure now. So I'll sign off for this section and we'll come back and we'll start looking at putting our leading edge in, our riblets, and finishing this centre section with all our stiffeners that need to go on these ribs.